Xi Jinping may still be the leader on paper, but powers within the CCP, they're shifting and things are definitely changing. So what we're going to talk about today is around women. In fact, it's about 3 women, actually 4. 2 professors from a Southern Chinese university, 1 professor from Peking University, and 1 former state media CCTV reporter, her book being deshelved in China, and why these are important evidence that we have to suggest that Xi Jinping's power is no longer in and the shifts within the party is coming. And before we continue with this point, I have a special announcement to make. Dear China Insider viewers, this August, I'm heading to Forest City in Malaysia, a haunting symbol of China's real estate crisis. For a 7-day investigation, I'll be exploring the ghost city and speaking and interviewing with people in Malaysia and Singapore about the Chinese crisis in its real estate, politics, as well as the general perception in Southeast Asia. My goal is to expose the growing influence of the Chinese Communist Party there. Your support will make this journey possible, powering China Insider to deliver unfiltered and bold truth. So why am I going? Well, it's probably the only place outside of China where we can witness the entirety of the Belt and Road Initiative from its rise to the downfall, the decade of Xi Jinping's ambition, and possibly witness the beginning and the end of the CCP's economic might. I am once again asking for your financial support. Sorry, that was my best Bernie impersonation. But in all seriousness, by donating, you become the driving force behind our mission with China Insider going to Southeast Asia. And here is how you can join us. While we're so grateful for any amount of donation that you can provide to us for this journey, if you donate $15, you will receive a personalized thank you letter from me. By donating $35, you receive a personalized thank you letter from me and exclusive behind-the-scenes photos of this trip, which will capture moments you'll never see anywhere else. By donating $65, you will get a digital book packed with outtakes, unseen footage, and my personal reflection, offering a raw insider look into the ghost city and all of its former glory. It also includes all of the $35 tier donation rewards. And if you donate $100 or more, you will receive exclusive, never-for-sale merchandise from China Insider specifically tailored for this trip. So make sure to support us in any way, shape, or form. You can offer a super thanks in the chat, or you can donate to us at the link in the description or in the comments. And I hope to bring you all of the latest about that ghost city once we do go. On May 10th, an article appeared under the name of a sitting associate professor at Peking University. This was a direct hit, calling China's economy broken, that the political system was unsalvageable, and that Xi Jinping needs to step down along with the CCP. For anybody inside the party, this kind of denouncement of the current leadership isn't just dangerous, it's practically suicidal. But if somebody is willing to sign their name onto something like this, and they still want to maintain a job, there's either 2 things. One is that, well, they're suicidal. The second is that they know something's up, and they're okay to do this now. And in that second case, Xi Jinping has to be no longer in control, and a new set of movements are taking place or taking shape within the party. If you've seen my previous videos talking about Xi's power, you already know what I'm trying to say here. And Xi Jinping hasn't officially been stripped of his titles, and in fact, we might not see this until end of summer, but what is happening is that he is simply now the figurehead, and there's somebody else or multiple people in control. And after losing his military power, this is perhaps the biggest indicator to us that things are going to be different. Disclaimer, I'm not saying I'm optimistic about this future. All I'm saying is that what's happening in the party right now is something we should really take seriously. Let's walk through what exactly happened. On May 10th, the editorial team at Yibao, which is a pro-democracy Chinese language publication, received a new commentary submission. The author is listed as Zhang Yingjie, associate professor at Peking University's Guanghua School of Management. Now, the email seems legit as it comes from a @pku.edu.cn, which is a Chinese education institution address. The article is titled 困局无解,体制无救, which means no way out, no hope for its systems. Now, it's not poetic here, it's just clinical. It's a very precise take on what the situation is in China. She allegedly wrote the commentary from somebody who studied abroad in the United States for a decade, returned to China to teach, and through her observation, the thesis here is very simple. The economy is dying, business environment's not good, people aren't spending money, consumer confidence is down, and people can't even get money out of their banks. Yet you have a separate set of elites. These are, her peers at the college, CCP officials, they're stocking up, buying houses overseas, preparing for the exit. They're going to abandon ship when things go south. Now, these problems aren't some outrageous claims. They're actually the reality in China today, things that we basically spend our entire channel talking about. She describes the lived reality of everyday disillusionment, policies that change weekly, documents that are voided as quickly as they're signed, farce of government promises that essentially mean nothing, this idea of Chinese-style modernization, right? These are all slogans from the Xi Jinping sort of thinking or his idea of governments. So these are things that nobody believes in. She names drops Li Keqiang, the former premier who many people thought was offed by Xi Jinping. Name drops Wen Jiabao, who famously said that economic reforms cannot continue without political reforms too. Now, this is obviously a lifeline for the CCP. If you do political reform, it just means you have to get rid of the system, right? Because the socialist communist system is naturally a contradiction to free market reforms. Everything about China that's wrong right now in her paper is tighter control. You have censorship, you have stifled innovation, everything, political overreach, everything that's wrong with China, she's pinpointing it on Xi Jinping. Other social events like the 2021 Zhengzhou flood, which massive amount of water went into the city and drowned people in the subways, and then there's an unknown number of casualties, but the official number claims to be 300 in a massive, devastating event. And so this idea that China is tightly controlled, tightly surveilled, and tightly, I guess you would say, silenced in certain ways, while this is now all being pinned on the Xi Jinping officials and, of course, himself. Now, the article repeatedly demands political reforms, and in fact, the last line, she actually says that Xi Jinping and the CCP should both go down, get out of power, right? But that line was actually deleted in the original article. Here's what happened after. So a day later, after this was published, obviously people, started to spread this around and went viral. A second letter was received. But before we continue to talk about that, you have to subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, as we do these in-depth deep dives on China every single week. It ranges from elite politics, social issues, as well as some stuff that are pretty funny. But also, I try to be consistent in my uploads every single week, so you're missing out if you haven't subscribed and turning on your notification. Why would a professor use her real name, show her real job title, knowing that people can find that stuff online, to write this commentary, and specifically on a publication that's targeted towards democracy and those type of situations? Does she have a vendetta against Xi? Probably everybody does in China. That's resentment. But is it warrant to post something like a career suicide or even an actual, disappearance or blacklist, right? This isn't really about the article itself. It's about what the article being public represents. What I think it is a test. It's a floating of sort of a test that happened within the party to see what is the current public opinion around this particular area, which I'll talk in more details. But I don't think this was simply a personal resentment fueled writing. Okay, so about that second letter, on May 14th, a day later, the editorial team at Yibao received a retraction notice from Zhang Yijing, the professor, saying that she did not authorize or she didn't even know about this letter. It also came from that same email address, and it also shows that it's a real authentic email address from PKU, which is very interesting because in that letter, she says to preserve her personal reputation and the reputation of the institution, you have to delete this article, which obviously Yibao complied and the article was deleted after just about a day or so. Okay, maybe it's true that the article was written by somebody else, used her name to frame her. But who would have this type of, how should I put this, issue against her, against Professor Zhang, to deliberately craft a commentary that actually spells out all of the problems within the CCP. It's very surgical. It looks at everything that's wrong, right? And then send it out to this publication overseas just so that, she can suffer a career downfall. Is that something that's needed? There's better ways to do things inside China that doesn't need to involve this type of political sensitivity, right? Because you got to remember, if you post this kind of stuff, that's a big no-no, right? Or at least previously it was. So it doesn't add up the fact that she's not a dissident, she's not a public controversial figure in China, she's not overseas, nor is she or previously have shown records of her descent from the party line. So this wasn't just to destroy her, it was to borrow her credibility to paint a picture. Now, if you remember, a few weeks ago, we did one about Madam Ho, from the wife of the former Singaporean Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong. She also liked and reposted on Facebook this article critical of Xi as well. So it seems like to me, there's this line of using women who are sort of, this idea, this persona that they're kind of apolitical, not so, on the edge in terms of like some men would be getting into politics, but a rather tame, but also at the same time sharp figure to send this type of message out. So this is not the first time we've covered this, right? Madam Ho was the first in our recent sort of period. She's the second. Okay, so that was the first set of letters. Now, this second woman that for today's video is actually two women. They wrote an open letter called Small Sparks Can Ignite a Vast Field. This letter is actually on April 30th, so it's before the first one we talked about. So the two people are Lin Ying, the Dean of the School of Biological Science and Engineering at South China University of Technology, and her assistant Han Shuangyan. So she's a CCP member, she says in the letter. She's a dean at the university. She is an elite official within the party. Again, this one's a full political declaration. It's again aimed at telling everything wrong about Xi Jinping. So she accuses the Communist Party of turning the country into a prison. She calls the regime an unaccountable dictatorship. She calls Xi Jinping's 2018 constitutional change, removing the term limits, which is a step towards lifetime rule. She described it as a betrayal of the people's hope for reform. She also named the costs. Suffocating control, no press freedom, no dissent, generation of young people burned under lockdowns, no jobs, those kind of things. She also names the 2022 lockdown protest, exposes the censorship of the 1989 Tiananmen Square massacre, she blasts the 996 work culture, and then she ends with demanding specific reforms like free and fair elections, end the one-party system, democracy changes, etc. They have the real name of the professor. They have their titles, their workplace, even their ID numbers. So it's like, yes, this is a real person. This is not some random fake AI generated letter. So that again raises the question, why them? Why somebody not from political science, but biological science and engineering would do something like this? So it gives you this, it's not a very direct shot of an arrow to the knee, but it's one where it barely misses. It's a warning shot almost. But I personally think it's more of testing the water. They're slowly trying to mold this idea of opinion publicly around the potential downfall of Xi Jinping. And so this is where we circle back to talk about Xi Jinping a little bit more. As we previously said that after his stroke in 2024 in the summer, the military control has been given to Zhang who is the vice chairman of the Central Military Commission. When a CCP leader no longer controls the military, they effectively have lost power. And so right now, even though Xi Jinping is still, seemingly normal with everything, within the party, there is a big push for what comes next. So in the summer months, or just a little bit after summer, I believe they will be hosting the 4th plenum of the 20th Party Congress, which is an all-important meeting which they will decide personnel changes. And we see various purges around Xi's most trusted confidants within the party and the military. Throughout his first decade, or even extending into the second decade, Xi Jinping has done many policies like zero COVID, like the continuation of Maoist policies that have effectively undone the decades of reform and opening up in China, right? So it doesn't matter who you are in the CCP, whether you're for Xi or against Xi. This is the time now to come out for their own, sort of power base or for their own future against Xi Jinping. And the core of this is what's safe to do, what's not. If Xi Jinping was truly still in power, this type of stuff would trigger a political manhunt. It's going to end people's lives. It's going to be the end of certain people. So this is not something people do lightly, right? They can do it through other channels, like maybe publishing it to, an outside editorial place where they don't disclose their real name, things like that, but never so bluntly. And let's talk about our third woman today. Now, this is a former CCTV anchor and reporter named Chai Jing. She has since left China and she started a YouTube channel where she continues to do some of the reporting. Now, in 2013, she wrote and published a book called Seeing, in which Chai Jing basically summed up her 10 years of time as a reporter and anchor for the state media CCTV. She covered many social issues like pollution, like the 2008 Wenchuan earthquake, which inevitably talks about tofu drag. She, covers the poverties in the rural areas of China. She also covered other issues, which effectively, if you look at it now, is all part of that censored content in China. Here's the strange thing. So the book recently was de-shelved. The order was sent out to many online stores. It was sent out to bookstores too, and to basically get the book out of purchase for people. So what's strange about this is that during the height of political sensitivity, the time of last decade, the 2010s, the book was fine. It wasn't removed and it was still selling. So definitely it wasn't because the content that she wrote was problematic. But after I researched, what I found out was that in this book, there's a person who might now have become sensitive to the regime. And that person, his name is Chen Meng. It's a man who Chai Jing views as a dear mentor and somebody who really helped launch her career within Chinese broadcast media. So Chen Meng is somebody he passed away in 2008 from stomach cancer at just the age of 46 or 45. But this guy, he's very evil. In 2001, he really was what propped him up to the the higher management level at the station was a documentary he helped to produce. Previously, he was producing these like on the ground, in-depth look of people's lives. But this documentary in 2001 was a documentary on the alleged Tiananmen Square self-immolation case of Falun Gong practitioners. So in the documentary, which is containing a lot of fake stuff and flawed sort of areas, for example, there was a man who was sitting there allegedly setting himself on fire, but the plastic bottle with gasoline in his lap was fine. They were trying to interview a burned victim who allegedly is also a practitioner. The person was speaking fine after severe burns. Then there's also one where there was a footage of a blunt weapon being used by possibly a secret police or something like that to hit someone on the scene, and that was captured as well.
我真的也就喝了有半瓶吧，一喝着好像想往身上那么洒。
So there's a lot of flaws to show that this was a manufactured propaganda piece to generate the hatred against Falun Gong practitioners, which they had to do after the persecution started in 1999. In China, they do this a lot. They demonize a group, and then once the group is demonized, anything that can be done to them can be justified, right? People don't hold any sort of emotional attachment to them anymore because they think they're evil. And that's what really led to the future stuff that's really evil, like the crimes against humanity. Forced organ harvesting on Falun Gong practitioners, they were the first group to face this. Later, of course, it extended to Uyghurs and other religious groups as well. The political censorship, the firewall, all that happened after 1999, which is again, to block a lot of the information that these Falun Gong practitioners were trying to send out to the world. And so the book and the person that directed this documentary, Chen Meng, he was so praised within the party at the time that when he died in 2008, he got buried in the cemetery exclusively reserved for top CCP officials, Ba Baoshan. So even former Premier and General Secretary Zhao Ziyang didn't get to be buried there, and yet some low-level TV producer person got that type of honor, which is very strange. So I think that the book that got deshelved wasn't because of Chai Jing, the reporter, but because of this man and what the current the CCP officials don't want to be associated with. So this honestly, I could be wrong. This is my optimism because I do hope, like I mentioned in my other video, that there will be rapid change within the party, that they would abandon the communist system, they would move towards something like a democracy. And in doing so, one of the best ways to do this is to distance themselves from the evil deeds that have been committed by the CCP. Right? Just like how Germany did so after World War II, you have to do this. And you have to, for example, unveil the actual truth behind the persecution of Falun Gong. You have to unveil what has happened since then, right? If you don't do that, much like the fall of the Soviet Union, we won't know until after it's been done. And by then, many more lives would have been lost. And so you really want to do this as fast as you can. And I'm speaking directly to the CCP officials as well. If you're still struggling to understand the impact of what you can do, you have to see it through. This is not something that can just be like, hey, we can ride out the wave. The fall of Xi Jinping is not an optimistic scenario. It's one where that can call for changes. And this change better be something that's positive for the Chinese people. And if not, well, who knows when the next Xi Jinping or the next Mao Zedong can come. It could be very soon. It could be the next guy, So with that all being said, don't just watch the headlines, see between the lines of what is being said in those articles. And I hope to bring you more evidence supporting this. But because in China, what we're really seeing is when someone gets to do something, it's never just as simple as a personal desire to do so. It always carries a political meaning. And I hope for the future of China, that political meaning is positive. Thanks so much for watching this episode. If you enjoyed the content, make sure to leave a like, comment below your thoughts on this video's content, as well as ideas that I'm trying to say, if you agree with it or not, and also subscribe if you haven't already.